Welcome back. Now we are again on web scraping. This is part 3. And I want to emphasize this is optional video for you to watch. However, if you're doing a project on HTML parsing, I think it's a nice, good video to see, an example of HTML parsing at work. Okay. And I was looking around the web trying to find the right example to show you, and I found this on a website by Stanford's political science department. So I'm actually rerunning some of the code. I've adapted it to our class, but this is I'm using it simply because this tells you, kind of projects you can do, simple projects you can do for our class. Okay, so let's get started. Again, the first few lines of code should be very familiar to you. You have from BS4 import beautiful soup. In the code, I'm actually using the request package to get a particular web page. And this web page, I've already loaded it for you here. This is an AFL CIO website. Okay, and let's say that for some reason, for our project, I want to basically extract the information that's here, right? These are news releases, and I want to extract them and store them in a separate file. That could be a project. Okay, so now to be able to do that, I need to understand the structure of the HTML code. So let's see how the HTML code looks like here. Okay, I'm going to view page source. Okay, and while I'm examining this, it seems a bit overwhelming because there's a lot of HTML code in here. Okay, so the way I'm starting here is I'm going to say, okay, let me look for this particular text. So I'm just looking for a text that I can locate so that I can orient myself in the HTML page. Find February, I think, yeah. So thankfully for me, I'm able to find February, quite easily, even though the actual file is quite quite long. I can see that this is the text that I'm interested in, right? I'm interested in this, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in this, and so on. Okay, so I'm in the relevant portion of the content that I want to extract, and I try to examine, okay, what kind of tags are around this text. And I already see there is something called div class, and I see div class, and I see something called EC statements. Okay, so what I'm going to do is now I'm going to modify my search. I'm going to say, okay, let me look for this EC statements. Okay, and I want to see, are there other tags that use this attribute? By the way, div is a tag, right? Class is the attribute. This is the value of the attribute. Okay, so what I'm trying to do now is, once I've located the rough area that I'm interested in, right? Now I want to see, and I see a pattern here. Here are the EC statements, right? When I search for this, I'm able to, I got lucky. It's a simple example where, just as it happens conveniently, just the content that I'm interested in extracting, they all happen to have a tag and an attribute with this value. And I'm going up and down. I don't see any other EC statements, right? And I only see 6 of them, 1 to 6, right? And I can count them here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I were to use a find all command, or if I were to apply the find all method, right, and use this as a way to extract, I can use this as a way to extract the tags that are here, the content that's here. Okay, so if you notice, the content is basically an anchor tag, right, that has a link. It also has a description of what that link is about. It has a date. So I'd like to extract, let's say for this project, these 3 pieces of information: the actual link, the description, and the date. Okay, so let's keep this in mind as I go through the code. So here's the page, and I'm going to go through the code fairly fast in case you don't follow this along, and if you take a look at it and you don't understand it, again, feel free to talk to me, okay, outside of class. All right, so we have the HTML link, right, the web resource. So I use C is r.text. I could choose to print it, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, maybe I'll do it in a different place, but what I'm doing here is I'm basically applying that C to beautiful soup. Again, very similar to what we've done so far, same thing. The difference here is now I'm using find all, right? Find underscore all, apply this to soup, But now I'm looking for the div tag. This is the tag, and I'm taking an attribute, okay, and I'm looking for EC statements. Okay, so again, this should be very similar to what we talked about before. Again, in the previous video, the optional video, I basically mentioned that you can look for tags, but you can also put a comma next to it and specify within the class, within the tag, what kind of attributes are you looking for. Okay, and that's what I'm doing. I'm adding an additional element to this find all method, right? So class. Now, the other thing that you might notice is that I put this as an underscore. Okay, if you notice here, I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to go back to the view source, right? I'm going to show EC statements. You might notice that the actual attribute only has class. Okay, so the reason why I put an underscore here is it applies only to class. For any other attribute, you would not add this. You will not add this underscore. I add this underscore to this because Python sometimes can get confused if I just type in class, because of the class and object concepts we talked about. Okay, so in this case, you need to add an underscore. Another way of doing the same thing, again, I mentioned this before in the previous optional video. I'm going to put it as a comment here, right? Instead of class, I can also use a dictionary representation. I can do class, right? Oh, and by the way, that needs to be in quotes. Then I don't need the underscore. I can do this colon, and then I do the EC statements, right? Make sure that you spell it right. And this, right, would work instead of this, okay. And of course, the benefit of dictionary is to review again is that this structure is that I can actually now specify multiple attributes if I choose to. Okay, so for our purposes, we decide not to use this. We just use this. Okay, now what I'm doing is that once I get an output, right, this should return X. Okay, so let's print X. Print X. This way you see what's being returned. Okay, and I'm going to separate this by, let's see, not separate, let's say end equal to, I'm just gonna put two new lines, two enter statements, two enters, so that you can see the difference. Okay, so you notice that I do this, and I'm gonna comment this out for the time being. Okay, so this way we can go one step at a time. Let's run this. So what you see is that you do see that this code, right, has extracted or seems to have extracted what we wanted, those 6 links, okay, that conveniently had the class EC statements. So I got those 6 links. Okay, I mean, if you're not sure, you can run the code, you can examine it for yourself. Okay, the result set that's actually lists the six links as a list. You see the open bracket here, the list, and the close bracket. Okay, so what I might do is to access these individual elements, I might just say for item in X, right, print item. Okay, let me make sure I got the indentation right. So I'm going to go back here. Oops, I think I got the indentation incorrect. So let me go back. Print. Okay. So let's see if it should be very similar. The result of this loop should be similar. It's going to take out the list, instead print the individual elements. It should print each of this is one element within that list. It should print them element by element or item by item. Okay, so let's see if we get that. Let me run this. So you see that you get the list, the original list, then you have 2 spaces here, 2 lines, then you see that the same thing repeats, but you do not see the square bracket, if you notice, right? Instead it's printing them item by item, right? And you have this here because I put this in here to separate each item. Okay, so you can see the same thing, but now we have the individual elements. Okay, which itself looks like there's a tag structure inside. Okay, so this is the output that we have right now, output of this for loop. Okay, now what can we do with this? Okay, so let's go down and try to see what we can do with this. Okay, so let me go down. I'm going to actually remove these two. We don't really need this for this example, so let me remove these two things. Okay, delete cell. For demonstration, we don't need this. I'm going to delete this to keep it simple. Okay, so now go back up here, refresh your memory. So we have this, right? So I'm going to take out the X as well. I don't need this. I only want the item by item. So let me rerun this. So the code is simpler. So we have the individual items, right, that contain some of the content that we want. As I said, I want the link, I want the description here, and I want the date. Okay, so how do we extract this from, right, from this item? Okay, so let's go down here. Let's see how we do that. So for that, what we can do is, let's just define a new dictionary. I mean, I call it lobbying, but if you want, you can say DT, I don't care, right? I call it lobbying. It's an empty dictionary. So I assign an empty dictionary to lobbying, the variable, right? Now I say for item, element, doesn't matter, for X, Y, some variable in X. And if you remember, X, right, it's the original list. Okay, so I'm repeating the loop in some ways. Okay, for element or item in X, I'm saying lobbying, which is the empty dictionary, right? And now I'm saying element dot A. Again, remember the HTML DOM structure. So the element is this. You have the element here, right? The other item, each individual element, each individual item. So element.a should get me, I'm going to go div class, div ID, a. So bingo, this should get me this tag, ahref, right? Until I close the tag. Okay, so now I'm saying in this tag, get text. Okay, and if you remember, get text, which should give you the textual content within the tag. That is the description. Okay, not the link, but the textual description. Okay, and if I go back to the web page here, here is your textual description, right? And that's what I think in this case is Jan. I mean, the example I'm showing you is a 6th example, so I need to go down to 1, 2, 3. The last example, which is Jan 5. This is the textual representation, right? And that's what you see here. Similarly, if you go above, you should see different textual representations. So, and if you think about it carefully, what I'm doing is element, the individual element, a tag. I got to the a tag, right? Now I'm saying within this tag, please get me the text. So I got the text. And the fun thing is that I'm taking this text and I'm assigning this as a key. If you look at the square bracket, lobbying is a dictionary, so that happens to be the key, and then I'm saying that whose value, right? This is the key, and the value of this key is an empty dictionary. So I'm basically setting up something here, okay, to get the values we want. Okay, so what we've done is, first we've extracted the individual elements. That should be fairly clear. We've done this before, in previous examples. Now once we have this, now in the next step, I'm basically declaring an empty dictionary. I'm going through the loop for item in X, right? And the item or the element is this individual element, right? Now I'm saying lobbying is an empty dictionary, and within this individual element, look for the a tag, which is ahref, right? And within this ahref, get the text, which is this, and make that the key. This is what it's actually effectively doing. So it's making this the key. If you remember the dictionary, the way I would assign value to it would be, I would have a dictionary and I put a square bracket and I put a key inside. That's what I've done. This is the key. And the value at the moment is empty dictionary. There's no, there's nothing much in there, but let's leave it there and we'll see what we can do with that. Okay, so if you want to understand, if you want to see what's in this dictionary, now you've changed the lobbying dictionary. It used to be empty, but you know now that you assigned you assign keys to that empty dictionary, and for each of those things, each of those elements, they also have a value which is empty dictionary. Okay, so if there are, let's say, 6 links here, right, 6 items or 6 elements here, 1 2 3 4 5 and 6, which corresponds to the 6 news releases here, right? So when I run this now, I do a for loop for key value in lobbying.items. Again, this is straightforward, very simple dictionary operations. I want to access the key and the value of the dictionary lobbying, right? If you had X here, you would put X here. If you had DT here, you would put DT here. All right. So I'm basically saying for key value items, basically gives you both the key and value, print the key and value. And if I run this, and I've already done this for you, here's your key, right? And here's your value. The value happens to be empty dictionary for each of those keys. Okay. So this is only the first step in trying to extract some data from the HTML link here. Okay. Now, let me go back to, so think about it. If you want to pause it for a second, and then have a look at this code, make sure that you understand what's happening here. Okay. And again, if you do not understand it, talk to me. Okay. So now keep this, let's keep this in the background. We now have a dictionary, right? Lobbying dictionary. It has some keys, and each of those keys has a value of empty dictionary. Okay. Now let's go back to X. Okay. The X is the original stuff that we got, which happened to be a list, right, with 6 items in it. Now when I come back down here, if I say X is 0, remember X is a list. If I say X0, it is going to refer to the first element, right? This element. If I say X1, this X2 would be 3, this element, and so on. Okay. So now here I'm saying, now that's the same thing as similar to this, right? Element dot A, and I'm saying get the link. Again, if you go back to the first video, this should get you the link, right? And the interesting thing here is that the wrinkle here, it might be different in different sites. The link, again, happens to be a local pointer. Okay, it points, it doesn't give you this, it gives you everything after. Okay, so if I click here, I've just clicked on it, so it actually gives you something like this. It doesn't give you it gives you this. Okay, it doesn't give you this. Okay, that's what the link, if you go back here and look at the source, it's a local link. Ahref is a local link. You don't have the main domain name here. Okay, it works, but this is what we have. All right, so let's come back here. So it gives you the local link, right? And now if I wanted to store this, let's say in the dictionary, I can store this as a local link, but we are probably better served if we actually add the original domain name. Okay, so that's what we are going to try to do next. Now we need to populate this empty values which are empty right now. Okay, so what we can do now is define a string variable prefix, and the prefix happens to be, for this case, obviously AFL CIO. Okay, and now let's iterate to X again. This is the X from the original soup object, right? For element in X, now lobbying, similar to this, it's very similar to this, right? So for element in X, lobbying element.a.getText, right? Which is what we did before, but now I'm saying, so that's the original thing. I'm specifying a key now. So I'm specifying a key to the empty dictionary. That is what this is doing, right? This gets me to the empty dictionary. This gets me to the dictionary, right? This gets me to the key, and this gets me to the other dictionary, the empty dictionary here. So I put a link, and now I have the key. I'm saying the first element here would have the key link, and I'm saying whose value would be prefix concatenation operation plus element dot ahref, which is this, right? So the value of link would be aflcao.org and then slash all of this. So we got the whole link. Okay, so what we are doing here now is we iterate through the loop one more time and we populate the dictionary, and we now added one element link for each of those. Okay, sorry. So now let's see if we've actually done that. So what I'm going to do is try to iterate through this loop one more time. Print. Okay, let me run this, and if you can see that for key value, the key is this, which is similar to the key here. It hasn't changed, but what has changed is that now I populated the dictionary with the key, link, and value. That is actually what's the local link, with the prefix AFL, say whatever. Let's see if it's there. So instead of an empty dictionary, you have a key and you have a value. Okay, and we've done that 6 times to the 6 different links. So what we've done now is taken HTML page, parsed it, right, and we extracted individual elements, and from there now we are taking the stuff that we want, which is the description, the local link, and we don't have the date yet, and we're going to do that next. Okay, so we're extracting some information that we want, and we're storing that in a dictionary. There's a nice combination of the stuff that we've done so far, and this is not difficult. If you think carefully about it, it's just the next step. It's not very complex. It doesn't use tricky aspects of Beautiful Soup. It's straightforward coding, very simple stuff. You just need to think about it carefully. So I would say, if you have a chance, think about this code carefully, because it kind of applies the stuff that we've learned so far. Okay, both from dictionaries and from Beautiful Soup, and it's not complex. It looks like a lot of code, but it's a very simple thing. Okay, so now let's repeat the same thing. If you want, pause the video now, right? Don't look anymore, and see if you can repeat this for the date. So we also need to add date. Now what we've done is we've added the link, and I mentioned earlier on that in addition to the link, I also want the date of the news release, right? So how do you grab date? Let's go back and look at the element here, right? So ahref, so we got the link by going here. How do we get the date? This seems to be the key. To get the date, I need to do something to this. So think about how you would extract the date, January 5, 2016, for example, from this tag. Okay, think about it. If you've thought about it, you want to if you want to see what I've done. So let's come back and take a look. Very simple. Find. I can do find. ID equal to legal alert date. If we go back up here, there are many different ways of writing the code. I'm just saying one. I'm just putting down one way. You can try other ways too. Okay. So this should give me. I'm going to go down here. This actually pulls the first one, which is February 19th. If we say find all, what's going to happen? Right? Oh, because x0. So for every x0, there's only one. So find and find all should be the same. Okay, so I have this. So what I need to do is do the same thing, run through the loop, and for each element get the legal alert date, but not just the tag. I don't want the tag, right? I only want the date. Again, think about what command you would use to get just the textual content. Okay, so let's go down here for element in X, right? Date equal to element find ID equal to legal alert date, and to get just the date I add this dot get underscore text. Again, we talked about this before. Okay, so I've defined this variable, I've assigned this variable date value, which would be for each loop to be the respective date value, right? And then I'm taking the looking at the dictionary here, lobbying, right? The key, which is the same as we did before. Now the difference is I'm assigning a second key here that I call date, right? And I'm assigning the value date to this. Okay, for all I care, this is not important. I could have done, you know, ABC here and put ABC, doesn't matter. Okay, so now what I've done is I've added a second element to the dictionary. So let's see if I've done that successfully. I'm going to run this again, and you can see that now you have the lobbying dictionary. The first element here's your key, which is a description. And if you remember, we started off with an empty dictionary here. Now it has two items. The first item is link with this value, which is a link, right? Second item is date with this value, and so on for 6 different links that correspond to the alerts here. Okay, so again, for our class, this would be a nice, you know, simple, not simple, but moderately difficult example that you might attempt. And again, this is not using any fancy code, any complicated, tricky part of the code from Beautiful Soup. Very simple things, Beautiful Soup, and some concepts from dictionaries you learned before. Okay, so this is one example, and since we've done that, I just wanted to finish this video by showing you 2 other things, just to extend it a little bit more. This is again not important. Again, you can examine the code at leisure. I'm basically printing the same thing up here in a better format. Okay, so you can examine this before. All it's doing is printing it not in a dictionary format, but slightly differently. Not critical. Okay, so let me move down here. So what I wanted to show was, again, you're not familiar with JSON, probably not yet, right? So I'm going to talk about it in a different video. So come back and look at this after you watch the video on JSON. So all this is doing is that when I run this code, it's going to create a new file called lobbying and basically copy the contents. Not this, but copy the contents of this as a JSON format file. Okay, and again, now I've taken some content and I'm writing this as a JSON file. Okay, and the name of the file is lobbying.json. I'm going to go back here. So it was just created a few moments ago. When I click on it, it's going to look somewhat like this. I created a JSON file that has the information that I'm interested in. I can actually now share this with other folks really easily. Okay, maybe you don't appreciate it yet because we haven't talked about JSON, but we will do so pretty soon. Come back and watch this part, you know, or run this code after you understand what JSON is. Okay, and finally, one other thing that I wanted to mention here, let me just go back to the code. The last thing is I'm going to ignore this package called OS, but again, it's something that's interesting. If you're interested, take a look at this web link. For our purposes, I've actually commented this out. We don't really need this. Okay, all we need is import CSV. That's all you need to do for this code. Forget about OS. If you want to know more, again, go to the link, take a look at what I've done. You know, it's basically I'm writing it to a specific folder. That's it. Not critical. For our purposes, import CSV. That's it. And then what I'm doing is it's a variation of the file open command we did before in files. Again, I'm not going to explain this. You can always look it up through Google. It's just a variation of the file open. The only difference is I'm importing CSV module and I'm writing the file as I'm writing the content, right, of the dictionary that I had there as a CSV file. Okay, and for A in lobbying.keys, write, and each of those, here's the description, here's the link, here's the date, write them as a CSV file. Okay, and the file name would be lobbying. Again, it's not critical that you understand this. I just put it out there so you see how it can be done, but you can always try to figure this out, again, going back and reading about CSV. Okay, so let me run this. So if I did this right, now you should have a file called lobbying.csv. Yeah, there we have it. It was not there before. Now you can see that it's a CSV file, comma separated values. So this is the header file, name, link, date, right? It's not the value, it's actually the header, the heading. And then here are the actual data points, right? The name or description, whatever you want to call it, right? Comma, that's why it's comma separated. The link, comma, the date for 6 different links. Okay, so again, useful ways of not only extracting, oh, I closed it, but not only extracting the information, but also writing this into a JSON file or a CSV file or even a text file. A text file should be pretty simple. We've done this before in the file selection. So I can write it as a text file, I can write it as a CSV file, I can write it as JSON or many other things. Okay, so hopefully you found this example file useful, optional, but a very good example for you to go through. Okay, so this brings to an end our tutorial on web scraping. You have more than what you need to do a moderately difficult HTML parsing project. Good luck with that. Thank you.